All right, well, welcome to the Q&A for the Fitness Level 2. This is literally a chance for anybody who's taken the Level 2 Fitness online class, or if you're currently taking it, to be able to ask questions on anything that's in the class. Heck, you can ask questions on anything, even outside of Fitness Level 2. We don't care. We will basically do our best to answer as many as we can. And we've got some questions that were already asked before this session started. So we'll start with a couple of those, but again, feel free to ask questions at any time. We've got an hour to try and get through as many of them as we can, and we will do our best to finish all of those. So let's knock out a couple of easy ones, Dave.
Okay, sounds good.
So the first question was, is the Fitness Level 2 exam time? So on the exams, any exam for TPI, whether it's Level 1, Level 2, is the same way. You have 1 year from the day of registering for the class to take the exam. So in other words, you can take it anytime within a year. And once you open up the test, it is as much time as you want. It's open book, open online class. You can take as much time as you want. If you actually log out before you finish the class, it doesn't count as a test. So literally, you can start the test, you can leave it open for 1 year, and still do it. But as always, we always say, leave yourself maybe 20 minutes. If it's taking you more than 20 minutes to do the exam, I think you're overthinking it. Yeah. Most of our exam questions, they're all multiple choice. You should easily be able to eliminate 2 of the 4 questions, or else you're definitely not reading the question properly. And then it should be down to those 2 choices. So
pretty simple.
Hopefully that answers that one. Another easy one was alternatives to the one-arm push-pull strength test. So, in our Level 2 Fitness, we talk about first and foremost evaluation. Yeah. Right? And in our evaluation, we use a cable cross machine to test the strength. So think about for us, golf is a functional, like any sport, it's a functional movement. We don't like to use anything supported because they don't have that ability when they're playing golf. So we use a cable to test them. And we've tested thousands and thousands of players. So now we have very good data on that we give you guys the tables on how to do that testing. Now somebody asks, is there an alternative? Now we get this all the time because some people don't have a cable cross, right? Your question was more of, you said it was a little awkward for gym newbies to do this. So I wanted to say 2 things. Number one is we used to use a seated cable row and a seated chest press. But then we got a lot of people saying, I don't have a seated chest press, I don't have a cable row. So you can use anything you want to do this. I think your question was more if it's a little awkward for gym newbies. Let me just go through real quick how we do that to make it less awkward. So Dave, if you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna I want you to just stand right here. So I'm gonna pretend that this is my cable cross, right? So you're gonna stand right here. I get them, if I get him facing here, I say get in your golf posture. So get in the golf posture. And if I'm gonna do a push, I have them take their hands by their chest, just like this. I grab the cable cross. Let's say this is the cable cross. I will grab the handle. I'll pull the handle. You stay forward. I will bring the handle right into their hand, right? So it's over here. So they're stable. And now from here, I just say, from this position, I just want to see you push forward. And as he pushes forward, I feel like that's very easy for anybody to learn that movement, right? So I don't like to get them standing, have them reach back, grab the cable, come over here, try and get their balance. I kind of do it for them. So I think if you use that method, I think that method would help you be able to do that a little less awkward, right? That makes sense. And by the way, as we answer these questions, if we don't answer your question fully, please just text in the Q&A part.
And we do have a lot of questions. So
we do have a lot. Yeah. Okay. And okay, so let's go. The next question list. Do you have that there? And let's put this up real fast. Okay, so, all right, let's see. From Neil, hey Neil, how you doing, buddy? Any technical cues for players to help perform the sit-up and throw test properly? So literally, there's only 2 cues that we use for the sit-up and throw. Dave, why don't we demonstrate this again, too? Sorry to get you up and down here.
Can I have you lay down?
Yeah, I'm gonna have you lay down. So, why don't I move that over just a little bit, Brian, so I can, so I can see the videos, they can see this. Make sure Dave is situated. Okay, so I'm just going to move you back just a little bit, Dave. And then, good. Okay, so literally what I have them do, the 2 technical cues is this. I say, okay, go ahead and lay on your back. The only things that matter in this test is I give them a tennis ball, and I say, okay, you're going to hold the ball like it's a soccer throw-in. You're going to hold it over your head. The only thing that matters is you have to start with your feet, and I'll back up, your feet flat on the ground. All right, so lift your heels, your toes up. Okay, that's not allowed. right? So I put their feet flat on the ground, the ball starts over their head, and now I literally just say, sit up and throw the ball as far as you can, right? Now sometimes I'll have them do a little sit-up first. Just kind of sit up, really good, and I stand right above them, and I just give them this feeling of what it feels like to do that little motion right there. And then I just start to slowly walk away, and I think most people will be able to perform that. But the key technical cues here are feet start flat on the ground. Now, once they start to sit up, they can lift their feet. Doesn't matter. We just start everybody in the same position.
You're exhausted.
And that's really how we do that sit up and throw test. I keep listening to those questions. Hold on one second. And okay, and then perfect. So let's see. How many times per week do you work speed drills with children under 14 years? Okay, so question is if in our training, obviously we have mobility training, we have stability training, we have strength training, we have power training. Now in power training, there's two parts of power. There's strength and there's speed.
Yep.
And I think your question here is how often do we do the speed drills with kids? Now here's the beautiful thing about kids. I don't know about your kids, but I know our kids, when they're under 14, everything they do is fast, right? They're just running around crazy over there. So it's not like you're tearing muscle.
Nope.
It's not like you're making them sore and we have to recover for a long time. So honestly, anytime kids are in these speed windows, right? And we talk about this in our junior class a lot. The speed windows is whenever they're growing fast, you should train fast. And when kids are really young, they're growing fast. And in the growth spurt, they're growing really fast. So boys around that, 11 to 13, 14 range, girls 10 to 12, 13 range, they are in the perfect environment to do speed. So in the fitness environment, I would encourage some form of speed training every time you see them, right? So now the question is, how often should you see them? I feel like, we always promote that kids should be doing multiple sports, but I think from a fitness standpoint, once they get into the 11, 12, 13, we recommend at least 3 times a week, right? That they're in the fitness environment or doing something physical. So at least 3 times a week doing speed training. But if you wanted to do some type of speed protocols every day, it's cool, but I just wouldn't repeat the same body part.
Yeah.
So remember, like if your idea of speed training is using the over and underweight speed balls, right? So if you're using like throwing, well, remember, there's pitch counts for pitchers, right? So you don't want them to throw 1,000 pitches a week, right? So as long as we vary up your speed protocols, like if you're doing sprinting one day, and you're doing throwing one day, and then you're doing tennis ball slamming the other day, and you're baseball hitting one day, and all of those different things. I mean, kids play different sports every day, and they play soccer every day, and they don't get hurt. So I'm not worried about them getting injured. I would say let's talk about the opposite, which is what's the minimum you should at least do, right? So I'm not worried about too much. What I'm worried about is not doing enough, right? So a lot of times, if you get them into strength phase or they're just doing technical skill work and you're not focusing on speed, well, now you're missing one of the best windows, right? So to at least see speed gains, I would say the minimum is they should do at least twice a week.
Yeah, and I think the thing too, Greg, is they should, whatever speed thing you have them doing, I think you need to have them swing a golf club or swing a shaft.
I'm assuming they're doing that.
Yeah, so make sure you're doing that.
Yeah, we're assuming they're playing golf, playing their sports, doing stuff. I'm thinking you're talking about in the gym adding speed stuff, and I would do a minimum 2 times a week, but I have no problem with you adding some type of speed protocols every time they work out. Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, for kids. Let me say one other thing about that too, by the way. We always talk about, like in our power matrix, right? We talk about you build strength first, then speed, then strength speed, and then you go into your, background power. For kids, it's opposite. We mentioned this in the fitness class, but for kids, we actually start with speed before strength because they don't have testosterone yet, right? So once the growth spurt hits and they get to that peak height velocity, then you have testosterone. But before that, you can't really build ultimate strength. You can build neurological strength, but you can definitely build speed. So kids, we do speed first. I think a lot of times people are worried about speed because we're used to adults that can get injured, but kids, we actually do speed before strength. Okay, let's see.
One was on pricing.
Okay, so would like to learn pricing payment examples for providing screens, fitness instruction, that kind of stuff. Great. So I don't think this is your question, but I want to point something out that we kind of see a lot that makes me kind of laugh. We have a lot of people who come to TPI seminars, and let's say let's say since you guys are in the fitness world, I'll make fun of the golf professionals real quick. Sorry. So I'll say, let's say a golf professional takes TPI level 1 and their lesson used to be $100 for an hour. They take a level 1 and then we see an advertisement a month later saying, okay, we still have a $100 lesson for an hour, but now we have a $150 lesson. And in this lesson, we're going to screen you, right? So they charge $50 for the screen. That is like the analogy to me is you go to the doctor, right? You go to the doctor and the doctor says, what's wrong? And you're like, man, I'm so sick. Like you got 105 fever, you're dying, your throat's sore. And they say, well, I'll tell you what, for $100, I'll give you a bag of pills. You can just reach in and grab whatever random pill you want. And hopefully you get better. For $150, I'll actually evaluate you and tell you which pill to take, right? So I laugh at this. I'm like, what do you mean? Like the screen isn't like something optional, right? The screen is part of your business. It's part of how you evaluate what you do. I don't charge extra for that. So literally what I do is I'm like, I'm going to come in and make you a better golfer. That's what we do, right? So I'm going to come in and we're going to build the ultimate fitness program to match what your coach is working on. Now, obviously, I'm going to screen you, right? So I don't charge separately for the screening. I charge for making you a better golfer. That's right. Now, let me make one little caveat to that. I do like sometimes these 2-day evaluations. Now, if you haven't heard this, this is something that I think a business model that a lot of people like. Where if you wanted to come into a club and you say, all right, basically it's $250 to get evaluated by this high performance coach that's going to come in. And again, the $250, that number depends on if you're in Beverly Hills, that's nothing, right? Somewhere else it could be less. So you have to price it based on your market. But if I say it's $250 and they're going to be here Tuesday and Thursday, right? And they're going to see 10 people, right? The first day, it's all evaluation. You come in, you meet them on Tuesday, you go through and you do the whole evaluation. And then you say, okay, listen, today it's an interview. I want to know, any injuries you've had, how long you've been playing, what kind of workouts you're doing now, what's your coach working on, get all the information. Then you say, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect a bunch of data. This data is going to help me identify your weaknesses, your strengths, and kind of build you a program. I'm going to talk to your golf coach, and we're going to create the ultimate fitness program. So you do this evaluation. After you're done with the evaluation, you say, okay, what's your time on Thursday? They say, well, my time's at 10 o'clock. You say, great, by 10 o'clock, I'll have your entire program built for you. Now, when they leave, they didn't get anything, right? All they got was an evaluation. But what they think is happening for the next 2 days is what?
You're working on it.
Yeah, they think you're analyzing the data, which you can. You have time to do it. You're analyzing the data, you're talking to the coach, you're building the ultimate program. So there's this perceived almost 3-day value over here. And when they come back, you do have all the time in the world to lay out whatever you want. Then you say, okay, based on all the information we saw on Tuesday, I've talked to your team, here's what we think you need to do. I love that. I think that's if you can pull that off and get to that to me is a great. We used to do that when I was in Washington, D.C.
But I think the other one too, Greg, is you have to be conscious of what the golf professional's charging at a club for lessons. So you can't come in and go, hey, he's charging $85 and I want to charge $200.
100%. Yeah, you absolutely have to remember that the golf professional is your life source, right?
Yeah, so to that point, that's why it's better that if you are looking for a golf professional or you're going in, if you can include them and do more of that programming, I think that's a better solution.
But I would say, I feel like when you have these types of advanced or niche certifications, you should charge more than the average train. So I would think, like, what's the average training session in your area? Remember, this is a business. So you've got to compete. So you got to look at all the training, go to the box gyms, go to the individual one-on-ones, look at what they charge for gymnastics and different junior programs. Go look at what the price is, and I think you should be on the high range. Right. So I think you should go on the high range, but like you said, don't outprice your golfer. Right. If your golf professionals charge you $50 and you come in and start to charge $200, they're not going to bring you.
I think the other one to look at too is there's beginning of the season, like Augusta National Masters usually kicks off the golf season, right? And after the Ryder Cup, that usually kind of ends the golf season. You go into that winter months. I think there's opportunities there where you can actually go to a club and go, I'll screen your entire membership. Here's the deal. I come in with my team for 2 or 3 days. We charge X per person. We do the screen, and then for the program design, it's a little bit extra. For the report of findings, it's this.
Yeah, I don't even like to make the program extra because it's like, what's the point of doing it without charging? So I just kind of put it all in there. But I think hopefully we answered your question. If we not, just I step back.
There is one other big opportunity, I think, too, for fitness professionals, and that is You've heard of Golf Tech. They're an off-site. They kind of cater towards the average golfer that's not a member of a country club. And they're actually the largest employer of golf professionals today. The actual name Golf Tech was meant to be teaching, equipment, conditioning. And they never really did anything with the conditioning piece. I think there's an opportunity for a lot of fitness professionals to go visit a local Golf Tech and go, do you have anybody providing programming for them? And that's an opportunity.
There's great facilities opening up everywhere, from the top golf to your
urban golf. That's another group in LA that's opening up.
No relationships. Okay, we're still going down our list here. What relationships have you found with lack of first metatarsal mobility, ankle mobility, quad TFL tightness, and lack of hip?
I don't even know what a metatarsal is.
Me neither. No. Okay, so Lily, what they're talking about there is the first ray, which is basically your big toe, right? So basically, a lot of times you got one of those. Yeah. So a lot of times, if you can't bend, you can't lift your big toe off. Like, if I put your foot flat on the ground, one of the things that we check in the medical world is we check, can you lift that big toe off the ground? And passively, you should be able to get almost 60 degrees of range of motion. Now, if you think about it, that entire posterior chain, we talk a lot about the posterior chain limiting your squatting, your dorsiflexion. If the posterior chain of my leg, the calf, is tight, it limits dorsiflexion. If the posterior chain of your back of your leg, your hamstring is tight, it limits, and it's not the muscles, more the fascia and all these other things that limits your hip range of motion. So that entire posterior goes to the bottom of the foot, right? So you have the plantar fascia which can limit the first ray or the metatarsal. So believe it or not, that entire chain that you're just mentioning there is 100% connected, right? So a lot of times when we see a dorsiflexion problem, we see a hip flexion problem, we see a first metatarsal or first ray problem. So, we always talk about in our medical classes, when we diagnose this, we don't say, hey, you've got a soleus fascial problem, or you've got a neural tension problem. We say you have a posterior chain problem. Because a lot of people, let's just say touching your toes, right? Going to bend, touch your toes, they go, oh, I feel that in the back of my hamstring. A lot of time, that's fascia in the bottom of the foot, plantar fascia, that can be causing this. So you literally have to scan that entire chain when we're looking at this from doing our fascial treatments. And you mentioned a lot of the big ones there, right? So the first ray or first metatarsal, ankle mobility, you put quad TFL, I'm going to say more the posterior chain, hamstring, TFL, not that we don't get quad when we have our hip extension problems as well too. So you'll see those. But hip range of motion, just think about mobility. Mobility can be caused, or mobility limitations can be caused by three things. I think a lot of people think when they have a mobility problem, they're thinking a muscle's tight. The one thing that the data is very clear on is muscles don't usually get tight. Okay, so it's usually not a muscle problem. It's usually, there are mechanical problems that create flexibility, but muscle is usually not one of them. It's usually like the fascia around the muscle. It can be the connective tissue, like the ligaments or the tendons where the muscles attach can be tight. And then obviously it can be the joint, right? So the joint can be very restricted. Those are the most common mechanical causes. There's also chemical causes of mobility problems. And those chemical causes can be things like inflammation. If you ever work out really hard, you feel a little tight. That's because of that chemical inflammation. If you ever get sick, right, you feel, if you're in the cold, you feel stiff. Well, that's real because that inflammation can do this. So ischemic problems, which means lack of blood flow, it's another chemical problem. If you sit all day and you sit on your butt all day, you tend to restrict blood flow to your hamstrings. So sometimes when you stand up, you're like, man, I feel stiff. Well, you've been cutting off blood supply. Bad postures, the S posture, C posture, one of the biggest problems we have with those is ischemic blood loss, right? So basically, you're getting these static positions and certain muscles don't get enough blood, and all of a sudden you feel stiff. That's why a lot of times you go do a sauna. And I know you do hot yoga. It's like it makes you feel better because you're increasing your blood flow. It's one of the many things. So there's chemical causes, and all this can affect the posterior chain. And then the third cause of mobility problems is neurological, right? So like reciprocal inhibition, we talk about this a lot. Like if I contract my biceps, my triceps relaxes. Well, the brain automatically turns off the triceps because it thinks I'm trying to contract this, but it artificially contracts my biceps. It helps me contract. If I sit all day, my brain thinks I'm contracting my hip flexors. If my brain thinks I'm contracting my hip flexors all the time and I go to stand up, this is the lower cross syndrome. The neurological system kind of puts neural tone on your hip flexors. So literally that quad you mentioned might be tight because your brain thinks you're trying to contract it. So a lot of times we can use neurological tricks. We can kind of contract your hamstring, all of a sudden let's go with the hip flexor in the quad, or contract your glute and let's go with the hip flexor. That's why sometimes one of the best ways to improve mobility is not with stretching, it's with strength training, because we can use these neurological tricks. So just remember that entire posterior chain affects everything from the the toe, to the ankle, to the hip, and it can be 3 reasons for that, right? You can have the mechanical causes, joint, fascia, other connective tissue. And by the way, trainers, if you're going, well, I can't do joint, yes, you can. There's lots of techniques you can do for mobility. We talk a lot about those in the class.
Yeah.
Like even a foam roller, you got to know which techniques, which tools are good for which problems. Like a foam roller is probably not the greatest for fascia, right? Yeah. But it's good for joint. You can actually use it to help open up joints. Yeah. It's good for chemical, for inflammation stuff. So you can kind of do some of those things. Okay, so hopefully we got that first question. Next one, or that last question. Where are we at here?
TPI Pro Site.
Okay, will there be updates to usability of the TPI Pro Site? I'm interested in adding my own. Okay, you said you're interested in adding your own exercise to the TPI Pro Site. So let me probably should do this, but let me give you a little preview of what's going to happen with the TPI app and Pro Site. So first of all, we have been working for 6 months now on making the TPI Pro Site part of your app. So we have the TPI app now that everybody gets, right? So if you don't have that, that's
I haven't downloaded it. You should.
TPI Pro app, it's part of being certified. You can screen everybody. We actually have a prototype version now where you can actually build the workout program on the app. We're hoping to have something soon. Okay. Yes. Now, as we're rethinking this and trying to modernize this, because our Pro Site, we've had this for several years. The #1 requested feature that's been asked in every country is what you just asked, can add your own exercises. I promise you that is something that we are working very hard on, to be able to upload your own exercises. It'll probably be a feature like most places where you'll have a certain amount of storage. Yes. It's always storage is the problem here, where you can, as part of the Pro Site, you can store a certain amount of exercises. You can always upgrade and get more storage. There's lots of places we can use to do that. So I am 100% working on adding your own exercises to the Pro app, and I would say there's probably 30 other features that we're working on adding to the Pro Site. So stay tuned. That's something we're really excited to be able to offer.
We hope to have a little bit more of the World Golf Fitness in October. We hope to preview a little bit more about where we're at.
We'll definitely do a preview. We did that at the last for the Pro app, for our current app. We will definitely give a promo of that World Golf Fitness Summit. And by the way, speaking of that, this year, every 2 years, we do our World Golf Fitness Summit. It is in Orlando. It's October 12th through the 14th, and we just launched yesterday. Let's see, 9th, 10th, and 11th. That's right. It's fitness level 3. It's the 3 days before the World Golf Fitness Summit in Orlando. Yeah. Right. So normally we do the level 3s here in California. Since we're doing the World Golf Fitness Summit, we thought it was appropriate to do the level 3 before the summit. Right. So there you go. The dates are on the website right now.
And obviously, if you take that,
the summit's free. Yeah, you can hang out and watch the summit if you're level 3. And we have an incredible summit as always this year.
53 speakers.
It's great. Yeah, it's always our favorite 3 days for every 2 years. So hopefully we answered that question. Okay, player power screen. Okay. So this is I've got a player. Their power screen numbers are pretty good. 29, 26, 24. So I'm assuming what you're saying there is that the upper body is 29. That means their chest pass is 29 feet. Their sit-up and throw is 26 feet, and their vertical jump is 24. By the way, those are all great numbers, but there's an imbalance between the lower body and the upper body, so we got to talk about that. Your question is, should I work on his leg strength to balance these numbers? Clubhead speed's 120 miles an hour. Okay, so first of all, you already have a very, average on tour, that's higher than the average clubhead speed on tour. So you've got a very powerful player. Now maybe this is someone who's trying to do long drive, or you're worried that maybe they're upper body dominant, because it's very common to see somebody with a 29 chest pass come over the top and use that upper body, because if you're their brain, you'd use their upper body as well. So some of the things that I would look at here is, number one is why is that 24 a problem, right? So why is the lower body number? So now the lower body 24 refers to our vertical jump. Right? Anytime we do our power test, and this is probably a good time to review just how our power tests work. We do the power test, we look at the number. If the number is below the norms, well then now we need to know, because there's a power problem, is this a strength or speed problem? Yeah. It's hard to measure speed. So what do? We measure strength. Yeah. If strength is down, we work on strength first. If strength is up, we assume there's a speed problem, right? Now this person, they're not below the norms, they're above the norms and everything, but their legs is getting beat by their upper body.
Yeah.
So your goal should be to make everything 29. If they're 29, 26, 24, your goal should try to make everything 29, trying to balance them. I think, especially if you see this person who's got a very upper body dominant golf swing, which I'm pretty sure they would with these numbers, you want to try and increase that lower body number. But I wouldn't work on trying to increase just vertical jump. That's the test.
Yeah.
We don't make the test better by practicing vertical jump, right? I would probably do a full scale assault here. I'd probably go look at his strength and I'd try and build the strength up. I might even look at the percentage, like of his push and his pull. You know, normally your push should be about 25%. Your push should be about 25%. Your pull should be about 35%. If those numbers are high and the legs is just normal, I would want the legs to be high, right? So I would add a little bit of leg strength, and I'm guessing because I don't have all your numbers. I'd add a little bit of leg strength, and then I'd be doing lots of ballistic leg drills, like box jumps, doing rotary jumps, all those types on speed, like sprinting, backward, forward sprinting type of stuff, and see if that starts to balance out their power numbers.
This is sort of a benefit to have 3D as well, to see whether
huge to have the kinematic sequence to see how it's affected. Okay, hopefully I answered that question. If not, just shoot us a little thing in the Q&A.
We actually had one come in, Greg, kind of referring back to the TPI app. So TPI app update include client lists from desktop pro website.
Yeah, so I think you're asking is, will your app import to your pro desktop? And yes, the two will connect. When we launch this, we've made some major modifications in the way we do our screening collection and even the efficiency of making our testing better. That doesn't match our current pro site. So we're working on converting our current desktop pro site to match what we've done with the app. Even our handicap is now using artificial intelligence that's much smarter. Each screens are weighed differently. So you might see a handicap difference between the desktop and the app. Use the app. The app's way smarter right now. So we have a lot more data on this. We're working on converting those, and hopefully you'll see those connect. But you won't have to do it twice. Everything will be connected. Okay. Okay. Do you ever use KVEST for fitness drills with your clients? Well, we use biofeedback all the time. So KVEST is one of the greatest tools for using biofeedback. You just got to remember how to use biofeedback. If you remember, when we talk about motor learning, it's really important that the client learns. They don't just perform. You want to make sure they're learning. And one of the biggest barriers to learning is them not solving the problem themselves. So a lot of times when you use a guidance device, like putting a shaft on the ground for alignment, or putting something on them that beeps at them when they're lower back, that's a guidance device. If you just do the guidance device and you just put them in the corner and say, just do this, they're not going to learn, right? When the device isn't there, it's gone. So what you do, you have to use it properly. We use the guidance device to make sure that they know what they're supposed to do. So you maybe have them do 3 or 4 reps with it, and they go, oh, so that's what it feels like. They're not arching their back. And as soon as they think they know, you take it off. You let them practice, and then you can retest them again later and see if it's better. And that's how we use that biofeedback. We do it all the time. A lot of our range, our normal range of motions are coming from when we do most of our screening on the motion capture. Right? Okay, when performing the strength and power assessments, what age is too young to be using the assessments on? So as far as I'm concerned, with the power numbers, that's part of our junior program. We do the vertical jump, the sit up and throw, and chest pass with 4-year-olds, right? We actually have a table in our junior class that shows you what the norms are as they go up. But it's basically, remember, the power testing is relative body weight, right? So vertical jump is relative to your body weight. It's your body weight. The medicine balls we use is 1 pound for 20 pounds of body weight. The biggest barrier is, do you have the appropriate medicine balls, right? Now, there are certain medicine balls that you can get now that go 1 pound increments. That are very helpful. So for kids, remember, as long as you're using the appropriate, if you give a 4-year-old an 8-kilogram medicine ball, okay, well, yeah, you can hurt them, right? We want to use 1 pound for 20 pounds of body weight, and you have no problem doing that. Everything's relative to body weight. Lower quarter rotation tests. Let's see. Invention on client feet are allowed. Hold on a second. What is that? Client feet are allowed. Oh, okay. Inversion, I think you meant. Okay. So on the lower quarter rotation, that's a good question. Here, I'm going to come back here so you can kind of see me here. Okay, so right there, you're asking, as I do the lower quarter rotation, can this foot do that, right? That's inversion of the foot. The answer is absolutely not. Okay, the foot needs to stay flat on the ground. Now, the ankle will have about 5 degrees of, I'll call it wobble, into the inversion and the inversion direction. But the foot stays flat on the ground. If the foot is flaring up, we tell them to stop flaring, stop lifting the foot up, keep the medial border on the ground. If they do it again and the foot comes up, we have them go back and do it a third time. And this time we just stop the test when the foot starts to come up. We just say that's where we grade, right? So the foot is definitely not allowed to come up. So remember, you should get about 5 degrees from the ankle. You get about 20 degrees from the tibia, and you get about 40 degrees from the hip. That gives you 65 degrees. We're just saying, can you get us at least 60? Yeah, right? It's minimal. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Hi guys, I'm just setting up my online training service. I need to screen clients online. What is the best way to do this? So, okay, well, that's a loaded question. So first of all, you have the app, right? So you can use the app to put in the answers. I think there's a lot of technology, you're using one right now, right? Or Zoom, where FaceTime, any of these things where you can see your client. The one thing you cannot do is you cannot ask them to screen themselves and then give you the results. If you ask anybody, if I say, hey, Dave, stand up and do the pelvic rotation test, now tell me if you pass. Do not trust them, right?
You have to see.
So we did a test on the deep squat. Here in North America, literally 29% of the population passes the deep squat. That's literally over 70% of the people fail the deep squat, right? In Asia, it's flipped. 70% fail because they tend to squat more. We did a self screen. You know, we used to have people do a self screen. Data came back. In North America, we had 70% of the people tell us they could do a deep squat. That's impossible, right? So we're like, hey, they're not doing this properly. So I would be very worried about you not seeing them. Well, the beautiful thing is there's so much technology right now when you're doing your online screening is to say, here's what I need you to do. Stand so I can see you. And as long as you can see them, you can screen them. That's
the difficulties there are you can't really stabilize somebody if it's.
You will have to make a couple modifications when it comes to torso rotation, the pelvic rotation test. I think you could
still get a good idea.
Yeah, that would be the number one most important thing.
Okay,
we did that. Would the Comerford Hip Complex be okay for clients with arthritic hips? So Mark Comerford does a great job based out of the UK on talking about the lumbopelvic region. We kind of highlighted a hip exercise program for increasing activation of the glute medius. I think the question more is mobility exercises okay for people with arthritic hips? Now, a lot of times, I think that this is the genesis of your question, and you always respond if it's not. Sometimes people think with arthritic joints, it's like you're in a cave, right? In the cave, you have stalactites, you have these things poking down. And sometimes when, let's say shoulder joint, the shoulder joint has the rotator cuff goes through this joint. And if there's these stalactites and stalagmites going down and the rotator cuff just keeps moving, if I keep doing these exercises, the stalactites can tear the rotator cuff. So they get a little nervous that, hey, sometimes the arthritic joint can damage muscle or tissue or capsule in the joint. And then sometimes people are worried that just because of all the arthritis, when you move the joint, it just gets inflamed. And then you think about it, when a joint hurts, the body tries to do things to protect the joint from moving, right? Just like if you ever get, like neurologically, we talked about mobility problems, the brain can lock you out, right? So it's called antalgic. But if you ever hurt your back and you're sideways, the body's going, don't move that joint more, it hurts, right? So if a joint's arthritic, sometimes the muscles around it can go tight to try and limit it. Sometimes the body goes, that's it. I don't want you to move that joint anymore. I'm going to glue it shut. Well, the body doesn't have glue. What does it have? It has calcium. So it starts depositing these bone spurs with calcium that's trying to fuse the joint because it doesn't want you to move it anymore, right? So I think the question is like, hey, if the body's creating an arthritic hip and it's trying to lock this down, is it okay for me to move this? All I would tell you is that we get great results with trying to fight arthritic problems by trying to go after mobility. I feel like there's two types of people. 95% of them will tell you, I feel better when I keep moving this. I remember Dr. Tom House, who you guys see on the level 2 class. He'll tell you, he always talks about that back in the day when he played baseball, they all did steroids, right? And steroids destroys the joint. And he's like, my knees were destroyed because of this. And he goes, but he does these little exercises that you see on the online class, and he's like, it's prevented me from having to do anything for so long. It's helped preserve his mobility. 95% of the people that I've worked on will tell you that these exercises help the arthritic joint. There are 5% that say it gets more inflamed. If it gets to the point where all these movements are creating more inflammation, they need medical help. Because that's how I would look at that.
There's a couple that came in.
You can see them over here. Okay, so let's see.
Down at the bottom of the chat as well.
Okay, let's see. Brett, yes, for someone that failed the radial deviation screen on the right side. Okay, so Brett, you asked a question. Do we have any suggestions for someone that failed the radial deviation screen on the right side? So that's the hinging up. test, right? So the radial deviation. So suggestions. So first and foremost, let's talk about the wrist and the neck.
Yep.
Okay. The two most common causes why people get out of the game: wrist injuries and neck injuries. Anytime somebody has a wrist or neck injury, we are always going to tell you it's worthwhile to get a medical evaluation. Now, I'm not saying this person's medical or has an injury, but anytime I hear wrist restrictions, most people with wrist restrictions have had an injury somewhere there. Okay. Now, let's real quickly talk about the golf swing. If they can't really hinge. Why don't we show a little bit about alternatives? Dave can kind of show you. So let me talk about like teaching around this, like what you can do, and then we'll talk about maybe some of the physical things.
So obviously it's important to be able to do that as the club swings back. We have right wrist bend, but we also have wrist hinge, which is what you're talking about.
You have both ways. You can extend the wrist or cup the wrist, or you can hinge up.
Right, exactly. So, people that have difficulty doing this, first of all, I want to try and find wrist bend if I could.
Yeah, more extension.
So more extension. So if I could at least get extension, I'm getting this position right here.
Yeah.
The difficulty comes, Greg, sometimes coming down.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about this. This is and I know somebody asked a question about mobility. Is it a joint problem or is it a fascial problem? In general, joints tend to be restricted in multiple planes.
Yes.
So in other words, if you look at your wrist should hinge up, it should extend, like Dave said. If extension is limited and hinging is limited, you probably have a joint problem.
Yes.
If you have a joint problem, again, I'm going to say we probably need medical help, because the best way to help joint mobility is distraction. There are some things we can do for distraction in the wrist. It's difficult for them to do it on their own. Sometimes this sounds crazy, but brachiation or hanging can sometimes help distract the joint. So like, I know there's monkey bars in the gyms, and doing something like the lat hang sometimes can help some of these
We're
people.
not even working. I've had work on my elbows.
We'll talk about the tissue here in a second. So literally, if it's limited in multiple planes, I'm a little worried there's a joint problem, and I'd be thinking more distraction type of stuff from a medical perspective. Fitness perspective, like I said, you can try some of the hanging stuff. If it's more it's just hinging up, right? Extension's great. Okay, we do exactly what Dave said. The coach is probably going to try and maintain more extension. The good news is the extension's harder on the downswing. So if they have extension, they can do this. But on the downswing, they don't need to hinge up, they hinge down. So you only need ulnar deviation on the downswing. So you don't have to use radial deviation in your golf swing, right? You need to do ulnar deviation, or else you can't make contact. But if you want to get that hinging up, right, and it's just hinging up that's restricted, well, then potentially it is a tissue. Essentially there's tissue. Now, so what tissues could be restricting hinging up might be the question here. So obviously, if I'm gonna hinge up, to me, there aren't a lot of soft tissue that restricts hinging up. It's not like one muscle. Oh, it's your glute that's tight that causes this. But this entire fascial chain, right, is something we would look at. Like you said, we would take a look from literally the wrist all the way through the elbow, just to see if they feel something. So literally what I do is I usually have them take their thumb inside their hand, curl their fingers over, and then I have them hinge up. And then when they do this, I always ask them, where do you feel this? If they feel something here, or they feel something here, it kind of gives me a little insight onto maybe where there's some fascial problems. If they don't feel it, they feel it more on this side, I feel like I hit a wall over here, that's the joint. Right? And I honestly, I don't think you should do things to try and increase the joint, because usually what happens is if you're like, man, their hinging is not working, so I'm going to try and do this hinging over and over again, and you're hitting in range of motion, now you create inflammation, and now we've got an injury, right? So I hate to say avoid it, but this is one of those that I really would prefer medical assessment on this. I would check some of the tissue. If there's some tissue, you can do some of your fascial stuff on here, some of the rolling stuff, but I don't force radial, I don't force extension, I don't force flexion, because I've unfortunately done that on so many players, and it hasn't been a good result yet. I don't know if I answered your question, but I hope I did. During the sit-up and throw test, should the client aim to keep his or her arms as straight as possible during the throw? So literally, we don't do any teaching of how to do the sit-up and throw. It's really important. They can do anything they want. If you're asking me, how do I coach it? I don't. Remember, we're not trying to figure out like what's the optimal way. I just want to know what they throw. But I would tell you, I've never seen anybody with their arms straight. Arm straight would be really, really hard. It's a soccer. Think soccer throwing. I'd be soccer throwing this way. So literally their elbows start bending. They're going to use this. It's a pulling. Remember, we're looking at the pulling motion. So it's this entire pulling chain. That's kind of what we're looking for. So I keep the arms bent and I sit up and throw, but just remember, it's just throw for distance. I want to not form-based coaching. Yeah. It's what do you want them to do? You know, object-based. So just, hey, throw it as far as you can. Don't coach them through it. Okay. Okay, let's see. Pros, cons of doing level 3 in Orlando versus waiting to go to TPI for it. Oh, okay. All right, good question. Is there any? So, well, again, obviously we don't have one at TPI this year, but okay, let me say this. I always think it's awesome to come visit the homeland here. Yeah, we're sitting here in the 3D Bay at TPI. It's really cool to see. But remember, you can do that anytime you want. If you're ever in San Diego, come by, give us a call. If we're not here, somebody here on our staff is here will give you a tour. You can see it. But for the fitness level 3, we should have everything we need in Orlando to be able to do what we want. Some of our level 3s, like golf level 3, we need a driving range. Yes. Right. So it would be very difficult to do that.
I mean, one of the reasons we did it in Orlando is because of the World Golf Fitness Summit. We saw so many fitness guys signing up to go to the World Golf Fitness Summit, and people were asking. And we have, you know what? Let's try and kill 2 birds.
We have a lot of our vendors there. We have all of our equipment there. So we have all the stuff we're going to need. All the speakers are going to be there. Exactly. I don't think there's going to be any like, oh man, I'm going to miss this because I go to Orlando versus TPI. If we ever feel like there's going to be a less quality of an event, we don't book it. Yeah. But I don't want to underplay. This is a really cool place to visit. If you've never been to TPI, you should definitely book time to come out and see this. Okay. Okay, let's see. Did we get all those on there? Identify. Okay, how to identify stability or mobility problem in lower quarter rotation test. Okay, so it's an awesome question. It's a huge, very important question, and it's a huge problem in screening, right? We're always trying to identify, is this a mobility problem or stability problem? And sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not, right? So the way I would tell you to do this, and we do this in our medical level 2 class, in the SFMA, the way we differentiate between mobility and stability is 3 ways. Okay, so the first thing we do, and let's take the lower quarter rotation test. So lower quarter rotation, this applies to any test. We do the lower quarter rotation standing. Now, when you're standing, it requires full stability, your entire body, hip stability, ankle stability, knee stability, core stability, everything. The first thing you should try, if they fail this, so I'm talking about how do I break out the lower quarter rotation, right? So I know it's a problem, but I don't know what the problem is. First thing you can try is you can try and eliminate body parts and repeat the test. Okay, now what does that mean? So lower quarter rotation requires hip mobility, tibia mobility, and ankle mobility, right? You're checking all 3. So not only do I not know if it's a mobility or stability problem, I don't know which joint's the problem or which area is the problem. So what you can do is you can say, okay, it's either a hip, it's a tibia, or it's an ankle. So why don't I eliminate the hip, eliminate the foot, and why don't I, back so you can see me, why don't I just check, still can't see me. Okay, why don't I check tibial rotation?
Still can't see me.
Okay, there we go. Why don't I check tibial rotation? So you can literally check just below the knee by sitting, I've taken out the hip, taken out the ankle, and I just want to know if you have 20 degrees. So I can see if you have medial 20 degrees and lateral 20 degrees on the knee. That's the first thing I can do to try and identify which body part, okay? I can actually have them lay on their back, bend their hips, and just have them rotate their legs, just do like a windshield wiper to check just the hip joint. So I can check, is it the hip joint? Is it the tibia? So I start to identify which area it is. Now, once I know which area it is, I still might not know if it's a mobility or stability problem. So the way we do this is we change the stability requirements and we repeat the test. So what do I mean? When you're standing, if we know the hip's the problem, right? If the hip is the problem when you're standing, but when you sit down or you lay down, it's not a problem anymore, that's not a mobility problem. Mobility problems don't magically change, right? Stability problems do. Stabilities are all positional or potentially positional relatives. In other words, when you stand, it's a problem, but when you lay down, it's not, or vice versa. If you see it changing, like it's weird when they lay down and do it, it's not a problem, but when they stand up, it's a problem, that's stability. Okay, so we can test joints in different stability requirements and see if it changes. And then last but not least, we can check active versus passive. Maybe you can't do it, but if I try and turn your leg, I can do it. Now, if I can do it and you can't do it, dude, it ain't a mobility problem. I can do it. You just can't do it. That's a stability problem. So we use that combination of eliminating body parts, repeating the test, changing the stability requirements, going up and down, repeating the test,
Yeah.
and active versus passive. If anything changes, it's a stability problem. Mobility never changes. It's like, it doesn't matter if Dave's standing on his head, he's laying on his back, or standing. I can't turn his hip. I can't turn his hip. He can't turn his hip. That's a mobility problem.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the easiest way to know that. Okay, let's see. How much inversion in the foot?
Sorry, no, I would go to this last
Oh,
one.
weird. Oh, sorry. What are the most common, Dave, what are the most common swing faults that cause golfers' elbow? What exercises or stretches do you recommend someone who has? Okay, why don't we talk about that?
Yeah,
First,
so
and I'll
that,
talk about the
you
exercise.
know, that's a good one in terms of obviously common swing faults that can cause golfer's elbow, and there's a difference between golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. So obviously golfer's elbow tends to be, which is kind of weird, better players tend to have golfer's elbow.
Yeah, and I want to say one thing real quick too. Different parts of the world call these different things, right? So like in Korea, if you have your elbow hurts, they ask you, are you a golfer or a tennis player? You say you're a golfer, it's golfer's elbow. Okay. Here in the United States, right, we say on the medial side it's golfer's elbow, on the outside it's tennis elbow. But just so you know, golfers get almost 7 times to 1 more tennis elbow than golfer's elbow.
That's right.
So that's really, really important to understand. But we'll talk a little bit about both.
We'll cover both of them. So
Yeah.
the easy way to remember that is obviously the smoothness of your arm is like a golf ball. That's the golfer's elbow side. If you have hair on the top, that's like a fuzzy tennis ball.
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
That's tennis elbow on the top side. So, you know, in terms of faults that can cause it, for tennis elbow, which is the higher one,
Most common.
things like your over the toppers, people that can't disassociate their lower body, they come in steep, and usually when they come in what we call steep, they have to release the club early. We might get a chicken wing type look coming through. And anytime you get these breakdowns, Greg, anytime you get breakdown of the lead wrist, bending of the lead arm, you can see the stress you're putting on the outside.
Well, yeah, we always do this. You take your elbow, you put your thumb on the bone inside, fingers on the bone on the outside, and then basically lift your hands up to the soft tissue.
Right.
Now, once you get onto that soft tissue, if you flex your wrist, you'll feel the soft tissue under your thumb contracting. If you extend your wrist, you'll feel the tissue on the outside contracting. So anytime you're extending your wrist, you're stressing the outside. Anytime you're flexing the wrist, you're stressing the inside. And go to the chicken wing, or go to the scooping there again. Chicken wing scoop. He's extending the wrist here. So he's aggravating the tissue on the fuzzy side. That's
right.
Tennis elbow, right? On the trail hand, you can do it back here. He's flexing this one, so he's extending this one. So now it's more, he'd get a bad player gets golfer's elbow on the right side, and they get tennis elbow tennis elbow on the outside.
And it's actually the opposite for a good player.
It's opposite for a good player.
Good players often try and create what we call right wrist bend, and they like to try and hold this angle, giving them like a forward leaning shaft coming in. So again, if I've got a lot of this coming in, I'm putting stress on the outside. So you'll see most good players complain of tennis elbow on the trail side. High handicap golfers complain of tennis elbow on the lead side.
So, okay, so now back to your question. Let's get to the fitness world. How do we attack this? How do we fix this? It's 3 stages, and I'm telling you, this is something that I'm really good at, right? I'm telling you, if you got golfer's elbow, tennis elbow, and it's because of golf, you do 3 things, and you're going to have a very happy client. Number 1, you talk to the golf professional. They can't do that. They can't break down an impact, right? So we've got to get the impact fixed, because it doesn't matter what you do. Every day, let's say you break your arm, and I give you some great therapy, and then the next day I hit your arm with a hammer. It doesn't matter about the therapy. Your arm's still going to be broken, right? So if you're doing that, we got to talk to the golf professional and stop that. Second thing, what causes that? The most common cause, like Dave said, and he said it real quick. He said if they're not disassociating their lower body. I'm telling you, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, it's not an upper body problem, it's a lower body problem, right? The lower body can't disassociate. They can't start the golf swing, the downswing, with their lower body. If they can't start with the lower body, they start with the upper body. And then there's no way to release properly if you start with the upper body. So you've got to go look at hip range motion, pelvic disassociation. You've got to get them to be able to use their lower body, or this never goes away, right? So this is not a what elbow exercise or hand, lower body. And then the third, and this is probably the most important, and based on my experience, you have to change the way they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Once the injury occurs, it is. I don't have any real data on this. I just have experience on this, and I would tell you right now, I think it's like over 75%. Every player that comes in here that has a persistent golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, sleep is the problem. They create the injury, and literally what they do is they sleep with their arm up. I call it the hand nipple rule. Excuse my language. Your hand is not allowed above your nipple at night, period. Right? Once you have golfer's elbow, tennis elbow, Literally, if your arm goes above your chest at night and you get in any of these positions, it's like somebody's hitting you with a hammer every night.
Yeah.
If you do that for 8 hours, there's nothing we can do.
It's like putting a kink in the hose.
Yeah, so here's what we do. Literally, and I always tell my players, like, well, I don't know if I can sleep like this. I'm like, do you want your elbow pain to go away or do you want to sleep? Because sooner or later, trust me, you go to sleep. We have them put a shirt on, a t-shirt on. If this is the elbow that's the problem, this is how they go to sleep, right? And if you wake up and your shirt's across the room, and we put a belt around it, and you do this for 2 weeks, and I'm telling you, your body will heal. You know, you think about it, it's like, why is your body not healed? Well, you've got this injury. Why are you still injured? If I can break your arm, put a cast on there, and it's brand new in 3-4 weeks, why is this still there for 6 months? You're still injuring it. Now, it could be from the golf mechanics, or it could be from your sleeping 8 hours. So three-prong approach. Coordinate with the golf professional. Stop the breakdown. Number 2, got to fix the lower body, right? So hip disassociation, all the things to get them to look at your pelvic rotation tests in level 1. Go after that, primary. And then number 3, fix the sleeping. Hopefully that answered those questions. And let's see. Looks like we got 6 minutes left. Let me see if we have any of these we missed yet. I think we're good. Okay, guys. So I think our whole list here. If anybody, we got 6 minutes. We're probably going to answer 1 or 2 more questions. If you got any questions, just type it in now. We always give about a 30-second count here. Oh, we just got another one. Okay, in your opinions, where is the boundary between too involved in the golf swing as the fitness professional? That's a great question. So, we talk about staying in your lane, right? Now, here's why this is important. I feel like your lifeblood in the fitness industry, and I've owned 2 gyms, so I think I can talk to this a lot, is the referrals, right? You don't want to have to be going out into the industry and trying to drum up, people. You want your people to be sending you more people. And when I say your people, your golf professionals and your fitness professionals, your medical professionals. I think a lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to bring a golf pro into my gym. Well, as soon as you do that, now you're competing with all the other golf professionals. And remember, when we say create your team, I'm not talking about 3 people. When I was in Washington, D.C. in private practice, at a medical practice, I had 81 golf professionals that were part of my team. I went around the entire area and I said, hey, listen, I'm your doctor. If you have any problems with you or any of your members, I'd love to be your doctor. And I just understood that if they had somebody who lived in my zip code, they'd send it to me, but they had other people too. I don't care, I just want to know in my zip code. Same thing I did with my trainers, right? So literally, if I started teaching golf, if I started doing fitness, strength conditioning, they'd be like, well, now he's a trainer, or he's a golf professional, he's not the medical guy. And it can create this lack of referral, right? So I always feel like the most important thing you can do is create the relationship with the golf professional.
So Clinton, thanks for your question. It's a great question. So, I think the key is for me as a golf professional is knowledge is power. I mean, you guys are very knowledgeable in the fitness world on the body, movement, strength, power, speed, all those things. The danger occurs when you use your knowledge above my kind of level of knowledge of the body and fitness and so on. I think what you need, if you see something happening in a golf swing and you can kind of probably suggest more than anything, kind of guide me like, hey, Dave, have you ever, like, you do this a lot.
You got to create the relationship first, right? So once we create the relationship, there's trust, right? Dave got to the point where he's like, dude, you got my back. Like, don't let me say something. So I felt comfortable going, hey, dude, make sure, blah, blah, blah. But he would be our voice.
Or you used to say to you might see this.
Right.
And I'd be like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I do see that, right?
Yeah. Or you ask questions like, hey, have you ever noticed that when their hips tight and their foot square, that they sway more? And people suggest questions like that. Yes. But I think the key is building that trust relationship. And once you have that trust relationship, I think the golf professional is like, you're my pit crew.
Exactly.
I'm the driver of the car. Dude, if there's smoke coming out of the tailpipe, you need to tell me.
Yes.
Once you get to that point, it's beautiful. Right?
So it's all about relationships. So, when you're working with a golf professional, you need to know his world. You can't just run into a country club and be like, this is what I'm going to do for you. You got to spend some time with me, see what kind of people I'm teaching, see how I do what I do. And then you're going to take your knowledge base and figure out how to bring it into my world. And if you can do that, I think.
But make sure you sound very confident on the golf. I think that's very important, right? And just think of it the other way around. How much exercise should they prescribe before they cross the line? It's the same thing with you, right? But you still want them to be very knowledgeable about how important the body is and fitness. That's very important. You need to be the same way with golf, right? That's very, very important. Okay. Glute stabilization in golf.
Posture?
Is that what's Margot in GP?
And golf posture, glute stabilization,
Is that golf posture?
set up.
I think you're asking, is glute stabilization important in golf posture?
There we go. Yes, your hips are bent.
Okay, so how important is glute stabilization with your hips bent? So, you know, there's a reason we call the glutes the king, right? I know everybody made fun of Tiger Woods when he says glutes weren't active, right? But I think it's really important that we talk about why neutral posture is important, right? So we spend so much time talking about S and C posture, right? When a person hinges from their hips, I think it's really important that the hinge should be occurring primarily from the hip. If the hinge is not occurring from the hip, but instead it's occurring from the spine, and they're arching their back.
Yes.
Whenever you arch the back and you tilt the belt forward, your brain thinks you're contracting your hip flexors, just like you're sitting. Now, when you contract your hip flexors, what does it do? It neurologically turns off the glutes. So now you literally have set up in a position where it looks like, oh, somebody told me to stick my butt out.
Yeah.
Well, you stick your butt out not by hinging your hip, by arching your back. When you arch your back, your brain goes, oh, turn the glutes off. Now, your whole goal in the backswing in the lower body is to load the hip to coil around that massive muscle, the glute, and to be able to explode from that muscle. But your brain just said turn it off.
That's why, like in S posture, you usually see early extension on the backswing.
Yeah, because they don't know how to rotate. They don't know how to rotating. So we always say it's not like, hey, I need you to feel like you're squeezing your glutes. I know. I just want you to be in a position where neurologically you can use your glutes. If you actually set up in golf posture with an arch in your back, I'm not sure if you can really do that. And then all of a sudden rotation becomes not only hard to do, it's not powerful. And that's the whole point about glute stabilization, right? Okay, looks like we got one last one. We'll knock this one out. Okay, so how many of the screen concepts from TPI transfer to RacquetFit? Oh, okay, I'll be able to use the Pro Site to give exercise. So guys, yeah, maybe I'll take just 2 seconds just to give you an update. Over the last 2-3 months, we've launched 2 other sports. So we have a website called RacquetFit.com. That's just like we've done for years, certifying fitness professionals for Titleist and giving you that credibility in the golf world. We now partner with the United States Professional Tennis Association, USPTA, which is the governing body in education here in the United States. And if you want to become USPTA certified, you can go to RacquetFit.com. And literally, you know, we thought this was going to be pretty easy, going, hey, tennis and golf pretty similar. It took us 3 years to develop the screening protocols that we do, and it's different. It's very, I don't want to say it's very different. There's 3 tests that we use the same for golf and tennis. Our level 1 RacquetFit is on the serve. So the serve is very different. Ground strokes will be a little more similar, but the serve is very, very different. Even like a simple one, like we talked about, like squatting. You know, squatting in the serve looks like this. If I said, hey, let me see you squat like this, that would be a horrible looking squat, but it's a great little squatting mechanism for the serve. So in RacquetFit, literally what we do is we have the Big 13, which is like our Big 12 in golf, and Big 13 serve characteristics. We have a physical screen that literally goes for tennis. Now, with that said, if you can't get to a RacquetFit seminar, of course, the TPI screen is rotary athlete. Golfers are rotary athlete. I think it will highlight a lot of things that you see with your tennis, but I do believe that you need to speak the language of tennis professionals, right? I think that's very, very important, and we will talk a lot about the connection between the body and the serve and the ground strokes. And then we launched On Base University, onbaseu.com. So On Base U is for softball, baseball. That actually just launched this week. And it's something we've been doing for a lot of years. We work with a lot of MLB teams, collect a lot of the motion capture data for some of the best players in the world. We're doing hitting in the first level 1. We have underhand pitching for softball, for fast pitch, and we have overhand pitching for baseball in the level 2s. But basically that On-Base University, if you're really baseball is your niche, will show you how we do things a little differently, even looking for different types of pitching positions and physically, and going over the characteristics for hitting and for pitching. So check those out. They are definitely different than TPI, but the philosophy is the same, right? So we believe the body is the most important piece. So, hey, I just want to take this last few seconds just to say we really appreciate you guys chiming in here. We are always looking for feedback. This is something new that we've started doing. We think it's really important. We'd love to get feedback from you if you like this.
Any questions you have?
If there's anything that you think that could make this better, please let us know. There were certain things you didn't like, you couldn't see certain things, couldn't hear certain things, please let us know. We're going to work to improve these. We will be announcing, I think we just booked a new one. I don't know if we put it on the website yet, but I think we have another Q&A for fitness. You remember that date, September? I think it's in September, I think like September 24th, 25th, but look at the website, it's coming out, so we have one in a few months.
Do these more often, for sure.
Probably once a quarter, if not more. I think it's September 25th for fitness. And
then the other thing too is, you know, as we go through this build out of the app and building out the pro site, anything, because your group is a group that's going to want to use this a lot because of the fact that we can now build workouts and deliver those to the customer. So any things that you guys are looking for that we could potentially get ahead of now, rather than deliver it to you and it not be right. If you've got questions, if you've got things that you would love a app that integrates the pro site, please get those to us. And we hope to see you all at the World Golf Fitness Summer.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you.